Okay, we're live. Hello and welcome to this new episode. So it will be the last for a while, but of course, this is not a definite goodbye for the live stream. It's just a little break as I'm sorting out other things in life, right? So I mean, as you must have received, my little message on Patreon, or if this is the first time you hear it, I'll be, I guess, focusing on, the Discord community, all the other services, and when I feel more ready to get back into it, I'll resume the live streams. But as of now, it will be a bit of a break. So anyway, hi Emily, hi Ricardo. I see you guys are here already. So let's get to it. Emily, I'm surprised. Usually you wait a day after to view the live streams. Okay. Hey Alina. Okay, so here's the plan for tonight. So as we left things last time, I showed you how to basically add a bunch of floating effects, right? Like the rim light, the main front light, everything, some framing shadows, etc., color variations. So in this session, in the first part of this session, I will show you how to sort of make a last check on all these effects before merging down, because it's super important, right? Like once things are merged down, it's really hard to adjust them and to have the flexibility that you once had, right? So it's a pretty important step to merge everything down and commit, right? It's something I encourage you to do all the time, right? It's something it's a good habit, merging things down once they are established and once you're satisfied with them. But before you do that, of course, a last check, going layer by layer and making sure everything is nice and fully ordered. It's really important. So that will be our first part. Our second part will be basically cleanup. I call it cleanup, but it's like pretty much blending the image together. You see like the character layer, making sure you blend the sketch in the render, making sure you get rid of all the little ugly pixels, the inaccurate shapes, etc. You see, just pretty much getting the image ready for the final pass of detail. I will also show you how I do this with the old guy here. So using mostly logic, you see like gauging where the light is coming from, the basic surfaces of the face. And I'll also show you an example with the dogs there in the background. And for the dogs, I'll be using reference because I'm not super familiar with Dobermans in this case. I'm sure a few of you are either. That, and then in the third part, I will be showing you just a few kind of, I think interesting tutorials for like just material rendering, detailing, etc. With a bit of an extra at the end on dappled lighting. It's something that Fabledbrush, our newest member, kind of had trouble and troubleshot that picture in the feedback section of our Discord server. So, and a good welcome present kind of, to I guess give a little feedback on that. Hey Daniel and Vojta, nice to have you on board as well for tonight. All right, so that's my plan. I guess I'll keep on. So let's get to it. Effects management, adjustments, layer management. So here's my character. That's the layer for my character, right? The sketch containing the front light, the bounce light, I guess, ambient hair there. It's also a kind of bounce light or a kind of ambient light that's reflecting itself in the hair. I got a rim light. So you see it's pretty much everything there. I got a rim light. So you see it's pretty much everything that we sort of did in the last session. But it was kind of rough, right? It was kind of making sure it's there, making sure it's roughly in the right place. But before merging down, let's make everything in order, right? Now I just have my character, base character layer, and my character sketch layer. And in between, all the layers are turned off. So I'll start with the color variation. It's a very simple layer. It's usually, good to have it on the face. Some other parts may need it, but like the go-to area to need it is usually the face, right? Because there's some redness in the cheeks, on the nose, in the lips, maybe a little shadow of beard, like a little grayish, bluish shadow of beard, other color variations that you may feel are necessary. So it's pretty basic. I kind of like actually breaking down things to the bare necessity, right? Not too many things, just so I have one layer just for that, for color variations. And what I'll make sure is that I'll go through the sketch and see, you see near the edge of the sketch, it's a little light. So I'll just apply it again, blend it, erase it there on the teeth there, for example. It's not necessary. So you see what I mean? It's like kind of detailing that stuff. Detailing each layer. So it'll be okay. That would be pretty much it. I mean, for in this case, for the color variation. Then we have a shadow layer. So let me. I'll just. I do that for my own benefit also. Like I'll just toggle them on and off just to see exactly their extent and see where it needs an adjustment. I guess it's pretty much okay. There's one place right here on the neck. You see there's a bit of emptiness there. So just pick the color. By the way, when you want to pick a color just for one layer, make sure that your color picker is set to current layer. You know, if you anything else, and well, you'll have a blend of anything, right? So I want to make sure I just choose the local color, like the color of the layer itself. I'll use a textured blender. And yep, kind of tidy up that shadow over here. Make it deeper in some corners. Maybe add it even in some places where I forgot to put it. It's a kind of it doubles as an occlusion shadow kind of layer. So like all the creases, all the nooks and crannies, the recesses of the character, I'll just add some there. All right. I like this blurry, this textured sort of a smudge tool. It helps me really like sort of soften things without painting, just with the pixels that are already there, just sort of soften the effect. And then I can add some more with the brush itself. So take the time you need, but you know, making sure maybe under the, yes, right there, that would be cool. Some occlusion shadow under the bag. But you see what I mean, right? Just tidying up layer by layer, effect by effect. Let's move on to, I have this layer called Fade. It's just, I guess it's just another adjustment for the shadows. Sometimes, you know, you just get these ideas. So I guess I tidy it up as well. I see it's sort of bleeding here onto, where is it? Okay, first of all, I'm noticing that I have a sort of weird color variation on the leg. I should get rid of it. Okay, you see just another reason why you should, before merging down and committing, actually make a nice last pass and make sure everything is in order. So here I'm just selecting a, oh, is there some lag? Okay, I'm seeing here. Oh, okay. I'm sorry if I don't know what's going on, if there's some lag here. I'm checking my streaming. Just a second. Okay. All right, so I just checked with my wife. She's not downloading anything or whatever. I don't know if the signal is super low or if there's any lag. I hope it's gonna get solved in the replay at least. That would be a shame. It's not that smooth. That would be actually a real shame. Okay, I guess I'll I hope it gets better. Anyway, so I was saying yes, I selected this area of the arm on the in the flat color layer. Easy to select, right? Once if you keep everything on a flat layer, selecting just one color is super easy. And then I go on to my fade layer, this layer here. What I added is, I guess, a bit of shadow, extra shadow. I don't know why. And I'll just keep adjusting, making sure it doesn't bleed over onto the leg, for example. Right there. Okay. Then we have the rim light. So again, you see it's pretty messy and rough over there. So not only I would fix it, but I would also actually go back, maybe with a smudge tool, and actually, you know, adjust and like, or maybe I should start with the rim light because it's way too distracting otherwise. Okay, I'll use the wet brush, pick the right color, and okay, I guess, yeah, sometimes you just have to start with the effect itself, dragging with the smudge tool, painting. Let me know if there's still some lag. I'm really sorry for that. I don't know. I'm not doing anything different than usual, but anyway. Okay, here I am anyway. Just okay, cool. Thanks, Emily, for letting me know. So detailing the rim light. So it, you know, it would take more time than this, of course. I'm just speeding things up here for the sake of keeping it succinct and concise. But you see, at this point, it's more like a local aesthetic little changes. The big planning was done in the previous live stream. Okay. Then we have this layer of bounce light here coming from the sky, from the ceiling, I guess. So I'll choose this as well. Maybe a different brush, this time a kind of textured marker. You see it's got a bit of a, it's part of my usual brush pack. It's a brush that has a bit of a streak to it, like a bit of a, like a textured sort of inside of it. I really like that stuff. It kind of imprints a bit of you know, separate strands of hair in just one stroke, so it's pretty sweet. All right. And go as far as you can go, you know, don't detail way too much, because I mean, there's still kind of a rough sketch underneath. Things are gonna need like a good coat of cleanup, but that's the next part, right? The second part of tonight. What else? We have some bounce light over here. I mean, not to be lazy, but the bounce light is actually fine. I'm toggling it on and off, and wherever it's hitting, it's supposed to be there, I guess, except maybe here. Okay, then we have our front light over here. That's also okay. Maybe I would remove it here. See, there was a bit of overlap with the bounce light. You see if I'm right there. So just like kind of remove it so that the geometry of the arm is kind of consistent. The plane that faces up should receive the bounce light, the cold bounce light from above, and the plane of the deltoid that's facing forward should receive the front light. So for the sake of, yeah, speed, I guess, let's call it, like, let's pretend this is all like satisfactory, right? And that's where I would merge things down. Now, okay, I'll try something here. I'll try to merge my front light. You see gradient map right there. I'll group it on top of my character, and it seems okay. Sometimes what can happen is that because the how to say, the base layer that's black here is too how to say, it's not quite, you know, maybe some things have changed in the characters layer, so they don't match perfectly. So sometimes you need to adjust that, and maybe a better way to do that is this, like basically go to your front light base layer, select black, and fill it completely in black. It doesn't, it's just a tip. Then merge everything down, and then group that with Ctrl-Alt-J. You clip that onto your character layer. This way you have you don't have the little weird black artifacts that can happen sometime. In this case, it didn't really happen, but this is just I guess a tip for if you see these weird things happening once you clip a linear dodge layer that's black like this onto your character, and some layer that's black like this onto your character, and some weird artifacts happen. That's what I want to avoid you to face. So just out of caution, I usually fill this layer in black, merge, and clip that onto my character. Okay, so now we have basically, you see that's that layer here with all the colors, all the effect merged down, and then now we have our character sketch just above it. I did you see right there this white icon there, that's a layer mask, and I put it there because you see if I fill it, it sort of overlaps with the rim light. That's pretty ugly, right? So when I do a rim light like this, I'll erase the I'll erase the sketch wherever it overlaps with the rim light. Okay, that's strange. There's a lag with the brush. That's really unfortunate. I hope it's not too distracting. All right, so well, I guess I'll resume the stream. Yeah, so yeah, I use this this layer mask over here to erase the sketch wherever it overlaps wherever it sort of masks the rim light. Okay, and that would be it. So I'll apply the layer mask by right-clicking on mask, by right-clicking onto the layer mask itself and pressing apply. Okay, is press Command and then click within the icon of the sketch itself, right there. I just click, and you see it selected the area covered by the sketch. Then I'll move on to this base layer and press Ctrl-J to create a new layer within the selection. So you see it created this sort of weird like color sketch, right? And if I turn the character layer back on, of course it's invisible because we exported it like from that layer. So what I would do now is go to Image, Contrast, and bring it all the way down. Maybe bring even more contrast like this. Then I would even go to Ctrl-U and adjust the saturation, just pump up the saturation somewhat. And this is what it does. You see my layer that used to be black like this, the basic character layer, is now replaced by a kind of more saturated, browner kind of layer. It's going to be easier to blend. You see this line of the jaw is now more like a brown, a saturated brown. The mouth there is also a kind of a darker red, whereas before it was just pitch black, right? And this is a little how to say, just to show you how it would result, if we merge everything down and started cleaning up like this. you see we would have this ugly sort of blending of pure black with the rest of your layer. So that's pretty ugly. So this is why I replaced the sketch with a layer coming from the character itself, the color base, which I darken and make more saturated. I keep the base, the character sketch, and I create a new layer mask for it, which I empty. And I'll use that. I'll just paint in the sketch back into the canvas, only where things sort of, where it matters to be black, you know, like for example the eyes, except for the irises, which are colored. But you see like the eyelids, the eyelashes, sorry. It's good to have like a to have like access still to the pitch black of the sketch. And then I would group these two sketch layers onto the character and merge. So that's it. You know, same thing with the bag over here. I would merge it. And I would create a new layer from the sketch. So you see it's a color sketch basically, using the same method as for the character. Then I would darken it, saturate it, maybe darken it even more. In this case here, it doesn't really matter. You see, I could pretty much use the same old, like the original sketch, but still there's some interesting basic color variations in the bronze, in the greens that I can reuse. So I'll do that. Merge with the character. What else? I guess I can, yeah, I can also merge this thing, all that layer with the hand and the rat and the dagger. You see now that we sort of used the different layers to their best interest, you know, to their best advantage, sort of tucking effect underneath, you know, in between layer groups. But now that it's all arranged, we can just merge and start rendering. It's actually easier once things are on the same layer, you know, so that you don't have to just navigate back and forth all the time between layers. Okay, so we just merge it down. Same here. I would first of all apply the layer mask on my sketch, then with Control and clicking inside the layer icon, select the area covered by the sketch, go back to my flat colors, Control J for a new, basically a new colored line, right? Darken that line, saturate it, darken it even more. So we have kind of a weird, like, saturated line art to use as a base. And that's pretty much it. Merge it with our character. Sorry, there's a bit of a, okay, this thing, this splash effect, I'm going to tuck it behind the character. Okay, this water splash, right, it used to be above, now I'm putting it below. Then I merged the dagger, the rat, and the lantern onto our character, and now you see we have a nice clean character that's in one layer. We can even remove it from the character group over here, which is now redundant, and remove that. So you see, this is the stage where we sort of like collapse everything and merge everything and make it all work. The background, what do we have? Well, it's already merged from last time. I'll keep some, of course, some layers floating. You see, it's kind of interesting to keep painting underneath the god rays, for example, you know, the atmospheric effect, or even the, well, that I can merge it down, I feel. I'll merge it, this one down. But the rest, yeah. Oops, that's not supposed to be here. Yeah, these two atmospheric effects, I'll keep them there. And yeah. So you see, we already have like a pretty clear and clean and easy to navigate canvas now. I'll even remove that from the background group. and remove that group over here. Yeah. All right. So now we're entering the second phase of our tutorial and of our like rendering stage, I guess, which is the cleanup, right? So now we have all these straggling sort of weird, things everywhere, like these lines that are not quite clean, right? So this is where usually I use the marker blur here as a marker and as an eraser. I'll use also just a smudge tool like this, but your basic square shaped sort of smudge tool, same from my reference pack, and I'll just go to town, as they say, and just blend things. I'll do it mostly on the face and some interesting areas, to just so it's clear and easy to see the change. So this, I guess, is pretty much the same as what I did last time with the the previous subject, the infected crew member. So this is this is where we enter the a phase that's pretty unique to illustrators, is this sort of long paced, slow paced rendering, where you make sure everything sort of blends together. You sort of tie up loose ends. Listen to your favorite podcasts, some music, whatever floats your boat. But of course, pay attention. Every time you see something that needs to be adjusted, that needs to be added, because it's still a pretty. It's very incremental. It's not huge choices are being made at this stage, but still, some stuff do need your attention. Like, for example, right now I'm increasing the importance of the eyebrows, because they were a bit light before. That was due to just the underlying sketch. And you see, I'm just I'm using all the previously underlying effects. You see the bounce light that's hitting the hair, the warm light that's hitting the front of the hair, and I'm picking colors and painting, picking, painting, tightening up everything. Of course, you don't want to do this. I mean, the whole piece is going to need some cleaning up, but you don't want to spend necessarily the same amount of energy on every area. This is where you need to be, work smart, right? And focus your efforts on the face, the hands, these little focal areas. The hands and the face are, of course, the main one. But in the background, this old guy here is going to be also a minor focal area. And the dogs as well. The rat, of course, will need its own cleanup. Yeah. Usually I like this whole step, I like to dedicate a whole day for it. Just to let you know, like waking up, seeing the thing. Like I wake up around 8. And by noon, I like to be done with the cleanup of layers. I mean, the effects adjustment, that first part that we detailed just earlier. Effects adjustments, sketch, coloring, all that stuff, just going through the whole piece, combing the whole piece and looking out for little things to be adjusted layer by layer. Merge everything down, and afternoon, like after lunch, until nighttime, until it's, I'm done with my work day, I'll just render away, like clean up like crazy. And then I'll usually spend another day just rendering and adding little details, and that will be our phase 3 for tonight. That will start, still in a while from now. Yeah. By the way, as I'm rendering, feel free to ask me any question, something. If you see something is like if I how to say, glance too quickly over something, Let me know in the comments. I also use the rotation tool a lot, from Photoshop, because like I like to use my default sort of wrist motion, this sort of arc. I'm left-handed, so my arc goes like that way. If you're right-handed, of course, your natural arc would go the other way. But you can see how my right-handed arc, my right side arc is from my left hand is pretty ugly, right? It's pretty wobbly. So I like to use my default, like a nice, strong, firm curve like this. And I'll just rotate to reuse it in its one original direction every time. I don't know if it's Bruce Lee who said it. I think it's Bruce Lee, right? Voita, you probably know this quote. It's like, I don't fear the fighter who practice 1,000 kicks once, but the fighter who practice one kick 1,000 times, right? Or something to that effect. So not to be too dramatic about it, but it's not a kick, of course. It's just a stroke of a digital pen, but still, like, if you get used to really that one motion, you'll really end up having a good and pretty tight brush control, And that's not because you can curve precisely all around like crazy. It's just because you have that one motion that you reuse over and over, years. Of course, sometimes you have a little bit of other motions to do, but and if I need it in the other direction, I'll just flip the canvas and, for example, go here. So it's always the same like motion, and that's where carpal tunnel can rear its ugly nose, like this syndrome that makes your wrist painful. So try to adjust your tablet layers and your stylus tablet settings and stylus settings to where you can gain some sensitivity, exaggerate a little bit, set the sensitivity slightly higher so you don't have to press like a maniac. And also try to hold your stylus kind of vertically, not resting in the crease between your index and thumb, because that will press against your wrist. But try to hold it a bit more vertically, like past that first big knuckle, not under it, but above it. And you'll see, like, that's now my default sort of gesture, and will be much later on your wrist. So do that as early as possible, and you'll be like me, able to work just all day, every day, with a bunch of other paints, but not no wrist pain. It's a thing like in Asian calligraphy, the brush is also used like vertically. And I guess it's if you're familiar with that, well, that's what I would liken it to. This sort of vertical loose grip. And yeah, cleaning up, you see there's a bunch of ugly artifacts there, some remnants of the layer not quite matching. Maybe use a stronger brush, like the wet brush. Okay. All right. But you see, you can gauge from just the size of the piece, right? Just the character alone, that is just a ton of, like, I have to go everywhere and fix everything, right? So this is why I usually say it takes a day. And if you're ever like worried about time or stuff like that, like, especially as a freelancer, time is not really a thing. You're probably, if you work from home, you're probably already cutting on a lot of costs, right? You don't have to commute, you don't have to do anything, like, you see what I mean? Like, you save already a bunch of money. So basically what it boils down to as a freelancer is to take enough work to keep the lights on, right? But then usually your clients they will have a set deadline for themselves, right? Say, okay, or at least for illustration, right? That's what I'm most familiar with. They'll say, okay, our next deadline for this project is on, let's say, well, June, let's say June the 1st or something. So I know that from now I have like a month and a half. I'll say, how many artworks can you take? And I would just choose and say, well, I would like to spend, you can just think that in your head, of course. I'd like to spend, I don't know, 5 days, 6, 7 days on a piece. So divide all the time you have ahead of you into 5 days, and you can guess how many artworks you can take, you know. Of course, take into account feedback delays, because these happen, right? Even with top companies, there's always art managers maybe that submit your work to an art direction team. There's a bit of debate, sometimes some changes, some pretty big changes sometimes, you know, structural changes to the piece can be suggested. And you know, the professional thing to do, of course, is to oblige and create those adjustments as quickly as possible without complaining, right? So, but that can, you know, take away a few precious days. So take that in account, you know, when you try to gauge how many days you have ahead of you. Yeah. And if the deadlines are, if the delays, feedback delays are really too big, you know, from no fault of your own, usually it's not unheard of to be able to ask, or if they're not offered already, a bit of an extension on the deadline. Yeah. So anyway, I was just like babbling as I'm refining, but you see the deal. I'm not actually creating anything much. This is very just cleaning up, blending the line art pretty much into the rendering, and it's like a pre-render. It's a pre-detail. Okay, so I'll assume. Let me see. I'll assume for the characters that's all I'm gonna do. I'll move on to the old guy and the dogs. Go here. Let me know if there's still a delay. I don't know if or if you all bailed, you know, if it was really unwatchable. I don't know how many people are still watching. Anyway. So here, okay, here's the background. Get my rough sort of a character over here. And basically what I'm gonna do, I can even turn on you remember I have all my vanishing points that indicates light sources, right? So these vanishing points indicates the direction of the rim light. This visible vanishing point converges into the lamplight, right? So I'm gonna use this to help me see visually the light on the old guy should fall. So I'll make a new layer, turn it to an overlay blending mode. Let's see, is this enough? That's a bit too pale. That's better. And a little darker, like this, right? I usually start with just a basic color, and then you see, like I just did, just adjust it with Control U until I get roughly the desired effect. So I'll make sure that my current layer is, my color picker is set to current layer. I'll pick this layer here. And now I'll basically brighten up the surfaces that face us the most, you know, on the face of the old guy. So that would be, of course, the tip of the nose. This implies that you're familiar with, you know, the planes of the face. That's a whole thing in itself, right? Of course, the side of the cheek doesn't receive much light. It's mostly the front of the cheekbone, the eye. This eyebrow over here. Not much of the forehead, I feel, because most of the forehead sort of points up, right? It sort of angles up. What I'm going to turn off the vanishing points. It's a bit distracting, right? I mean, we cannot know, like, basically it comes from the front, pretty much straight from the front, this light. So it's pretty easy to visualize just in your mind's eye, like how it should fall onto this background character. All right. Daniel, you're asking me how many illustrations I do each month. Well, it's by 2 months actually. Because 1 month is for the sketches usually, at least for Hearthstone, and the second month is for rendering. I'll usually I can do 4 or 5 illustrations a month. If everything's okay, you know, if I don't have any, I don't know, anything else to do. Usually I manage to squeeze time around, you know, if I have to, I don't know, if I have somewhere to be for something specific. But especially nowadays, like during these, you know, COVID times where I don't have much things to do besides working, you know, that actually kind of increased my work time, the time I can allot to just working. But you got to be careful when you take too much time, because you can easily, even if you make it, the quality of your work can suffer. You know, if you take just too much, or if you take too much for too long time. Once, twice, it's okay, you can manage it, but after a while, the quality of your work may suffer a bit. So this is where it's on you to maybe ask your client, hey, you know, is it okay if I take one less piece every month, 2 less pieces? Usually they can tell where you're coming from and they'll understand. I mean, at the end of the day, it's, you know, you're trying to provide a good service, right? So yeah, focus on quality is what I'm saying. A couple of highlights on the toes. And now let's blend with the blurry marker. So you see I used kind of a different technique for this one, because for this old guy, because I don't have a line art. It's pure, it's only form, like painting with forms, right? So that's a bit more advanced. It can easily become messy is what I'm talking about. So make sure you pick, you know, the right color for the right areas. So for example, the planes that face away into and face like the bluish background should be a bit colder, like this sort of desaturated brownish color there. And the planes that face towards the lamp should receive a brighter, warmer, more saturated skin color. Yeah, it's well, for now, yeah, it's enough. I mean, with experience, you get paid better, you know, better and better. So it's really okay for me and my family. It's okay, like the income, definitely okay. But it didn't start that way, of course. You know, at first you don't have a ton of work, so this is why I just like bank on really quality, like really try to focus on quality and let speed sort of come up with experience, because quality alone will make sure that your clients come back. You know, all they ask is to be on time. They don't ask you to be super quick. I mean, as a freelance artist, I've never been really pressured. It's rare. Sometimes there's an emergency, but it's understood as such and even compensated as such, you know. But in general, it's a formula based on seniority. You know, how long have you been working with the same client? They'll maybe give you a raise, and how good you are, you know, truly. And if you, for a while, you need a second job, you know, like a side job to make ends meet, because you only have like that one piece a month or every 2 months from that big client, because maybe at first that's all they give you, that's all they entrust you with, or maybe that's all you feel comfortable taking because of your speed at the moment. But you know, do what you gotta do. But yeah, quality is really the number one thing, because that's what ends up on your portfolio. And if you only have, you know, half-assed, barely made it kind of pieces on your portfolio, you won't attract a lot of clients, you know. And then it's just plain old, you know, planning. I try to, like, I have a planning on my desktop actually. Well, I guess there's no need to show it, but it's I just like every month I just note down everything, like every day, what I'm supposed to do every day, like in terms of work, so that I can plan far ahead, until the deadline, and I count how many days of work are needed for each piece. Then I put them on each square per day and see, okay, on that day I'll do the sketches, on that day I'll do the color roughs, then I'll update my client, then on the next day I'll do the whatever, the cleanup, rendering, etc. And so far it's been working all right. Anyway, I could go on and on with this whole guy, but I think you see what I'm doing, right? It's just refining. If you need a reference, take a reference. If you can do it by yourself, do it by yourself. Like, I mean, this belongs more to personal feedback. That's something I can help you more, like personally, and even tell you about in our personal hangouts, right? That's something that's a bit more, I think, would be more useful than explaining how I just detailed this one guy, right? I kind of like to make these like the rendering part, like the more of a one-on-one kind of thing, or at least a group sort of call where we all where you have like a specific problem and I can help you with it. It's not like just like the feedback I'm gonna give to Fabledbrush very soon. Okay. Then I would go on to the Dobermans. So I have this reference here on the side, and you can see how I didn't really reinvent the wheel. This face here is a kind of a mix between. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong. I should use this one. That's rough. Okay, yes, that's the one that needs to be worked on. So for this face here, I'm going to use basically the two left side pictures, these two ones, the bottom one for the mouth itself, and the upper one for the structure of the face. So that's kind of that's the cool part of working as an illustrator, is that you get your practice from working. You see, like I've never really painted a dog of that breed, so it's like, okay, cool, I'm just sort of learning the volumes of the face as I paint, and until next time I have to paint a Doberman, it's like, yeah, but it can still be used, in general. That doesn't hurt to it's kind of cool to just sort of flex, like how to say, stretch your understanding of forms into a new subject every time, because a lot of things come back, the cheekbones, the bridge of the nose. It's pretty much, you could morph it into a human being, with just with at least these two shapes, right? The cheekbones and the bridge of the nose, if you just change the proportions. So you sort of reuse the same basic sensibility, but in different proportions. So big holes for the nostrils. I mean, this is pretty much working from it's replicating references, but paying attention to where my light is coming from. I have this strong rim light coming from above, this bleached, blue light, so I'm not gonna use it here. I'm trying to consciously, purposefully make the light stop at some interesting changes in plane, looking from my reference. So the cheekbones are pretty interesting. Create something like this. See, there's this triangle just under the eye. It's pretty sweet. Daniel, you asked me, do you work for Japanese clients as well? Not right now, but I have in the past. It's, well, it was actually pre-COVID, so that dates back, right? It was cool. Like, I mean, it was kind of a mixed, a hybrid sort of company. At least the project was sort of hybrid. There was a American project manager who sort of helped us, translate, and he would translate the feedback from the art directors into English. and kind of fine-tune the feedback process between us. Because my Japanese it's really not enough, or it's not functional enough to just, you know, to work in Japanese, fully in Japanese. Anyway, you see, I'm just sort of like going over. Well, I could zoom in, I guess, a little bit, seeing where the right now I'm just working on the eye. So based on the reference and my light direction, can the bottom eyelid, the lower eyelid, receive some of that light? I guess yes. Even on the upper side like this, there seems to be a kind of some room for light over there. Now, if it doesn't look great, feel free to use a bit of artistic freedom, maybe make the dog frown a little more, which would sort of make the eyelid disappear in shadow. I think that's better like this. And then I'm going to use the bottom thing here, the bottom image, as reference for the teeth, especially the way teeth are spaced. So I'm going to use this bounce light. Oops, wrong layer. It's basically, okay, I'm going to use light that's basically falling from the opening in the roof, hitting the ground, and bouncing up and illuminating, you know, the shadows like of the ears and here and the neck. So you see, you sort of have to know where your light is coming from. It's really vital, you know, if you want to make a piece look 3D, voluminous, you know, realistic. You can't just make up light sources just, you know, because teeth are white, so you just make white teeth, you know. You have to still think. Anyway, so okay. Now I'm making sure that the tooth sort of sticks out from just the right area. So you see on the reference, there's the edge of the nostril, the outer edge, and then the tooth is on the same sort of tangent, the same sort of line. So I'm going to do something like this here. And same on the other side. Let's file down those teeth to the right size. Same for the bottom. They have a kind of an angle to them. Try to replicate that from the reference. I'm using the wet brush. It's a really good all-purpose sort of brush. If you make it small enough, you can like almost pre-render. You know, it's almost there. And it's such a far away detail anyway that I don't feel you need to be that minute, you know. Yeah, you gotta be careful to, again, you know, save your energy, save your time, and not over render. The more you know, minutious, always, you know, for the longest time I really had a hard time stepping back and letting things be a bit rougher. So it's a really common sort of a problem, you know, for illustrators, like the big picture thing. The opposite seems to be true for concept artists, you know, illustrators that come from a concept art background. They have a hard time just settling down and you know, okay, just spending an afternoon rendering something, you know, a face or something. Once things are there and suggested, they feel like, okay, that's enough, let's move on, you know. Let's see the geometry of the ears. Try to replicate that also. There's a nice sort of a round thing here. I'm trying to do the same. And this wet brush really allows me to create weird little textury transitions on the shadow line. You see on the shadow line of the ear. And I can even create like little tufts of hair breaking through the line, through the shadow line. But to be frank, actually, about the Japanese clients, Japanese projects don't pay usually as well. I've noticed. It's just different budgets. They do have, I mean, of course, gargantuan budgets for video games, but they have so many people to pay so much. It's such an integrated, very stratified, you know, top-down hierarchy of work in Japan that I don't know, like the artists don't seem to be super high, and there's such an abundance of talent also that the demand for talent is not I don't know, like talent seems pretty cheap here, you know. I don't know, maybe it's just a couple clients I've worked for, but we were never surprised how well they paid us, you know. It was like, okay, all right. Anyway, do the same with the other side of the ear. Remember, that's something I've described in previous live streams, like the idea of biological symmetry. Something looks realistic, appealing when it's symmetrical. So make sure your pure breed rich people's Doberman has very symmetrical features. His ears are clipped at perfectly the right length. So yeah, just trying to replicate, you know, similar details from one side to the other. Yeah. So I mean, you know, I would just keep going on and on and on, I guess, like that. What else can I talk about? Well, I guess that's about it. I'll close this one and move on to this one here. So this would be imagine if I just carried out this piece here, this version here, all the way, you see, to the cleanup, like to the end of the cleanup. So that would be something like this if I toggle it. Of course, it's much uglier, especially the old guy here, because I'm kind of rushing through it. But that would be, you know, after patient, you know, addition of details here and there over the course of a couple of days, this is where I would be from here. So the cleanup is done, most detail is done, and I can move on to rendering and adding like these little, I guess, which will be our third part, the little rendering and detailing, you know, tips and tricks and mini tutorials, I guess. So I'll just close this one here. And use this guy over here. Okay, so I will start with water drops, drop tutorial. Here we go. This is the final, and as you can see here, here, there's some water drops, right? And there's a kind of a method, a very quick, easy to apply method that I'm going to show you right now. So I'll go over, I guess, over everything, create a new layer. I'll call it drops. All right. I'll use a round brush for that and a soft eraser, soft round eraser. I'll select our just the brightest color I have, because it's going to be mostly playing with light. So I guess something, not the brightest, but something close, something like this, like the basic color of the water being hit by light. And then I would just paint the silhouette of a drop, right? repeat it somewhere else, but smaller, you know, like always have a hierarchy of sizes, right? You don't want to paint the same drop everywhere. It would be really weird, you know, in real life to have the same, you know what I mean, like the same detail, same size somewhere else. It's always, there's always a gradient of size, a gradient of color, a gradient of light. There's always something kind of fade into one way or another, you know, they don't just stay the same all over. So repeat it over here, and I guess that would be, I'll make it a little bigger here. Okay, now this is the trick I always use. I'll create a layer mask for this drop thing, this drop layer. So right here you see I have this little white icon, that's my layer mask. And with the eraser, I will erase where, you see, if I turn on the vanishing point for the rim light, you can see where light would sort of hit first. So that's the tip of the, you see this area here of the drop. Then actually light would sort of travel through the drop and actually accumulate at the bottom like this. And then with the round brush you can recreate a highlight on top. That's it. How crazy is that? Just pretty much remove matter, remove color, of course, on the layer mask. Remove matter the closest it is to the highlight, the closest it is to the light source. So here it's closer to the top edge, right? Because our light source is coming from the top. And then you recreate a highlight right there. You see, that's what I did here. That's what I did over there. Make sure you over detail, you know, one drop, like the front one. Again, you know, like saving your time, right? Like if this one, the front one, is really well rendered, the rest can be a bit loose, and we'll understand, you know, we'll sort of understand by repetition. We'll sort of associate their level of detail subconsciously to the level of detail of that front drop, and we'll assume that they've all been thought out with the same level of care as the front drop. You see, that's kind of the effect. I mean, now that you think about it, you may feel, okay, that drop over there is pretty lame, but I don't think you've thought about it the first time, right? I don't know. Anyway, then you can even apply the layer mask right there. Now it's just one layer. Also, I guess still the round brush, but a brighter color. Let's make it almost white. I'll create just a sharper highlight over here, and even one at the bottom of the drop, right there, like this. Yeah, that's all right. Like this is okay. Now, after this, select one drop at a time. So let's start with the front drop, and let's go to blur and motion blur. And let's add a bit of motion like this, a bit of, you know, cinematic sort of action blur. Let's select another drop, repeat that, but of course selecting setting the motion blur to a different direction, because it's falling from the top, right? And there you go. Same here. Well, I guess we can reduce the intensity for the third one. Sorry, filter, blur, motion blur, and just a little less intensity for that blur, the one, because the drop is very small. Okay, and now last effect, we're gonna select just a color, like a murky looking color, you know, like greenish or something. And I'll sort of, on the new layer that I clipped onto the drops, I'll just add a bit of murkiness to the front one, and a little bit to the second one, but not much, and pretty much none to the last one. And the idea is to recreate like atmospheric perspective. So as drops are being, you know, more distant, assuming, you know, like the smaller they are, the more distant they are, the bluer they would be, because they sort of like are caught into the God rays or the atmosphere, the steam, you know, which is sort of bluish. So the one closest to us would receive that, or not receive, but how to say, would reveal its local color. It's kind of, you know, murky, greenish, sort of horrible, you know, sewer water color, and the others would be, I guess, bluer. And that's it. Merge, and now you have a nice, neat sort of drop effect. Okay, Daniel, you have a question. And the style of art is very different. Is it hard to switch from Blizzard to Final Fantasy or any other? I mean, I've never worked for Final Fantasy. That thanks for assuming I would, but no, it's okay, I guess, because usually you, I mean, it's if you're methodical like this, you know, if you like, the process itself can be used for any other style, right? It's like more or less simply the same, right? What changes are proportions, you know, color schemes, but the way you paint in, you know, the way you apply, I don't know, lighting effects can be the same, right? So, I mean, it does take a while to get adapted, but I mean, usually they know that you come from maybe different, maybe it's your first time working on such a project, a new project, so they'll usually have a package, you know, sort of a visual guide, like a style guide, and tell you, okay, this is what we're looking for, this kind of shapes, this kind of colors, here's our good reference artists, try to paint like them. And usually during the first collaboration, they will be a bit more, you know, hands-on, you know, and tell you, you know, like fine-tune your adaptation into the new style. But of course, sometimes, you know, it doesn't work. Sometimes it's really way off, you know. So what I, you know, I mean, the best case scenario is that you're off due to like stylistic differences. Like it's not your style, it's not your thing, you know. They just chose the wrong artist. It can happen, you know, and that's no fault on you. Like, you tried your best, but you're just not. You're skilled. You know, you apply the same know-how that you know from previous projects, but it just doesn't work, right? That's truly nobody's fault. The worst is when you just you're not good enough because you're not working hard enough. You don't care enough about the project. That can happen too, you know. That's the more unfortunate part of it, or that maybe your skills are not good enough. You know, you have your comfort zone and it's a bit too tight, and you cannot really adapt. I mean, it's a whole spectrum, right? There's reasons why some things work, sometimes I mean, some projects don't. I hope that with my point is, with all this mumbling, is my hope is that with a more methodical approach, you can pass some hurdles, you know, like the usual hurdles, that you're not intimidated by new proportions, you know, or by new color schemes, or by new lighting schemes. That these are all like settings that you can adjust in your head because you have a method that can be applied, you know, from one style to another. That's the best case scenario. That's really what I hope. And that's what I guess organically sort of developed. That's what I'm happy to, you know, share with you. It's this is stuff I use for my everyday work. So hopefully an approach like this, you know, something methodical, paint by number. I know it's not glamorous, but that's way better than a flary, you know, like inspired style that's very rough, very impetuous, but relies on you being in the right mood, painting the right subject, having the right amount of time, you know, and stuff like that. Try to have a method that's sort of unconditional, that doesn't depend on things, that can be adaptable. Yeah, but I guess that's it for my ramblings. Okay, second tip on water, that would be water reflections. Here in the final, you see there's some nice little like reflections, like for example this fragment of wheel is sort of being reflected in the sewer water. Same for the roots over here. they're sort of reflecting themselves. I mean, there's not a ton of, you know, it's pretty simple and straightforward, but I still want to like detail to you like a kind of a key point of water reflections. So first I'll just paint some water, just murky black, you know, water like this, maybe a little lighter here. Maybe more purplish, slightly, okay. And I'm kind of making like these sort of small puddles or holes where you know, the edges of the water are kind of designed, like determined by the, how to say, the cobblestones, I guess they're called, you know, the pavement of the sewers, assuming sewers have pavement. I'll use my perspective grid to sort of orient the layout of the cobblestones in the right direction. I can be irregular, of course. Actually, this is what I like about, you know, like fantasy versus you know, sci-fi. Sci-fi is very precise. You have to be accurate. You have to like display interest within very ordered forms, you know, very regular forms, and that's pretty hard to do, right? Whereas with fantasy, you can just completely, you know, distort bricks because everything is kind of man-made, so it's imperfect, right? It's not machine-made, so things can be a bit more roughly designed. Anyway, okay, I'll just stop detailing bricks and start actually addressing water reflections. Okay, so that's our base for the water. Now I'll just select the object that's supposed to be reflected, in this case the wheel, just the wheel, right? And press Ctrl J, and now it's over, it's on its own layer. I'll flip it upside down, and I'll drag the edge of the wheel onto where it touches the water, onto where the original wheel touches the water. And I'll of course erase the surplus. A bit of overpaint to indicate just the right angle. And you see basically reflections, I mean, naturally, you know, it's super crystal clear once, you know, if I say it, but reflections start where the object touches the water, right? And that's pretty much it. Then what you can do is add another layer mask right here, a soft eraser, and erase the part that's closest to us. Because actually in this, there's just a lot of water here. Sorry, wrong color. There's a lot of area here, you know, between the wheel and us. You know, it's just that we're so low on the ground that all this, like there could be like 5 or 6 meters over here, you know, between the camera and the wheel. I don't know, right? So there's so much water that actually the part that's closest to us would sort of not catch much of that reflection, not a ton, you know. Maybe it would be some irregularities, some wrinkles, some ripples. See, like this, I'm sort of erasing where ripples would appear. I'll apply the layer mask by right-clicking and clicking apply layer mask. And then with the smudge tool, I'll even like rough it up slightly. Then you can add some bubbles using any light color that's close enough, you know, a grayish sort of color. And again, like things don't need to be super detailed, they just need to be there. And in the final step, then, you know, finally, if you have an afternoon to spare, then, you know, tighten up everything you can, but first it needs to be there. That's enough. Like, let the viewer sort of imagine, you know, connect the dots, and from all these subtle cues, create in his mind subconsciously the idea of a rich picture, of a highly detailed picture. Because if you check my my final, and you look at any given area, it's not very detailed, right? First, because I was kind of running out of time, but also because past a certain point, it's just grinding, right? It's just over rendering. It's you know, it's okay, but it's that should be really the last sort of thing, that a sort of a luxury. But a priority should be set on definitely just first putting down the detail, and then finally detailing it. Okay. So now I'll make a new layer, and I'll do the same over here. Just create some water. Maybe using the perspective once again to sort of understand the subtle, you know, angle of the edge of the bank right there. And the lines of the bricks, you know, where the water should stop. The sort of cobbles on the ground. And then for smaller elements like this, maybe you don't need to like do the whole selection and flip. That's more for detailed, you know, elements like this that you don't want to repaint. But for roots like this, I mean, in the original one, I just sort of repainted the roots as it was, you know, starting from the point of contact where the root touches the water. Then that's where the reflection starts. So this area equals this area based on that contact area. Maybe, you know what, I should actually make it higher so I have more, so that reflection is actually, there's more to play with. And then I can just sort of rough it in like this. And I just like before, just erase the part that's closest to us. Small things like this can create a pretty immersive, you know, rich, immersive sort of atmosphere. And I just wanted to show you the final to see how, you know, how I did it. See, it's still pretty rough, right? But like a bunch of small, rough, but well-placed elements can truly create the idea of something that's complete, I guess. Okay, so then, okay, that's an interesting tutorial now. It's a fabric. So now we have our pants that are pretty, you know, smooth, I guess. And this is the final version. So as you can see also, if you zoom in, it's pretty roughly detailed, right? But with just enough distance, it looks all right. So let me show you how I did it. So here's my character layer. I'll create a new layer, group it on top of it. I'll use the sketch brush. So it's also part of my brush pack. I recommend it for this specific effect. And here's why. I'll start with this part here of the leg. I'll select a color that's in the shadow. And now I'll paint a line here. So here it's not the right direction. You remember the sketch brush from previous tutorial? There's one part that's very dark and one other side that's like lighter. So in that direction it doesn't really work, but in the other direction it sort of creates just the right effect. So what we're going to do is first paint a bunch of lines like this, and then a bunch of lines like this. But of course not like this, because that's way too rough. It's you know, it's really ugly. So try to draw like one weave at a time, you know, one sort of point of embroidery, not embroidery, but weaving, I guess, right? Textile at a time. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but it's actually, try to zoom out to make it, to have the big picture. And just with the same motion, you just create this sort of lines like this. Then on a new layer, which you also clip onto your character layer, you create lines from the other direction. Again, you just have to find the right direction. This one is the wrong one. This one works better. It works better because you see the shape sort of rolls away. Just it indicates a rounded shape that rolls away, and with the right impression, from the light that's coming from above. Marcel, if you're viewing this, I'm thinking of your little kind of boy character with his pants. You can use something like this. And you see how just creating the verticals, or I guess the other direction, it creates this nice sort of like a rough fabric effect. Then you can merge them down and sort of, refine. Recreate some, erase. You see I erase with the soft brush. I recreate with another. I'll move on to another area. This one here. So same here, I'll just do some rough lines that roll the right way. Yeah, that's the right way. See, they're not too regular, but they sort of roll around following the volume of the leg. So they slightly angle downwards, right? Then with a new layer, which I also clip on top of the character layer, I'll just oh, okay, that's the other direction, that's right. Let me redo that. So not this motion, but that motion. You see, because it creates a nice sort of cast shadow from the bounce light coming from the right. It just creates the right impression. And these weird asymmetrical brushes are pretty good for creating an immediate sense of volume. You see, if you use them in the right direction. But of course, this is detailing, so it takes a while. You have to try, erase, try again. Like I'll merge. Maybe I'll flip just to see. Okay. And you see, okay, this is my original. Not much more complicated than this. What I did in the final here with the character is that much tool. Sorry. I recommend you to do it. If you have like cast shadows onto your fabric, right on the shadow line, try to push a few, lumps of fabric, a few threads of fabric, push them out a little bit. It's a small but interesting effect. It's a small but interesting effect. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for fabric. What else do we have? Okay, there's another interesting effect. It's how to say a simple, like how to add simple cold specular highlights. Here would be, and I'm gonna pretty much recreate these little highlights here on the belt, on the shoulder, onto our character. So super easy. Create a new layer, set it to overlay, select your wet brush as a brush and as an eraser, and just use the white color. It's really good as a basic color. Like in this case, I didn't even change it afterwards. Sometimes you need to paint first, using the white, and then you realize it's a bit too bright, it's too gray, so then you give it, with Control U, you just change the hue of the color, the saturation, the brightness, etc. But as a starter, it's actually pretty good. And I'll just go along the edges of each object. So the edges of the belt. This is a tip, this is a trick that I use for Hearthstone work. It's actually kind of a staple of that style. The Hearthstone style is, stronger highlighted edges for each object. Same for the buckle. Just using white and creating details here and there. In the final pass, I sort of went over again and sharpened things up with a sharp brush, a round brush or Sharpie, also part of my brush pack. But this is the basic sort of pass, using the good old wet brush and just going over the edge of pretty much everything, and creating nice little specular reflections everywhere. And the white in overlay kind of is good enough to pick the local color and just brighten it. And for a cold specular reflection, that's really all you need, Then you do need to pay attention, to the intensity though. So sometimes you need to paint something, then you raise it a little bit. And the brush tool, the wet brush, is actually pretty good at creating small, textural imperfections like this, if you just spend enough time rendering them. When it's too intense, I just erase it somewhat, repaint it maybe lightly. Like the way I've set it up, at least on my, with my settings, my tablet settings and whatever, the wet brush is just, just intense enough that without too much pressure, you can create a strong line. But if you need to, by lightening up a little bit on your pen pressure, just by not pressing so hard, you can just have a little bit of pressure leeway, a little bit of transfer, of transparency. And I would go just over the whole character like this. Try to avoid just lines that continue like this, right? Always try to have, you see, I'm just making a line that shoots and then disappears, then a little bit of punctuation. I guess it's punctuation really. It's a way of using rhythm and not being too linear. Try to know where you're gonna have a highlight and where you're gonna have like a longer line just behind it. You see, like on this side, on the purple part of the shoulder garment, there's a dot, a line, a dot, a longer line, a dot. You see, it's kind of, I guess, Morse, right? Morse code. Avoid too many dots in a row because that's a little weird. Avoid just continuous lines. It's weird also. Try to alternate, small, big, medium, small, small again, medium, small, big, with enough variety that it creates a nice sort of a random, organic, feeling. Like a natural chaos, I guess. That's pretty much it, really. At least for that effect. Could just go on and on. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you see, that's it, really. Even it works on the metal as well, of course. And that's usually on the last day of, you know, like the beginning of the last day of rendering is when I'll start this sort of pass. But you know, it's a whole, yeah, it's gonna take a while to go everywhere. But just using white, you know, you can create a nice layer of highlight everywhere. I really like that. You know, things that don't need a lot of brain power. You don't need to play around with settings too much. Yeah. Okay, so I guess that would be it for this effect. Now, okay, one thing I wanna maybe talk about is the way I arrange the fire effects. So first I have the flame itself, and the way I did it is basically with a I guess I can redo it. With a soft brush and a soft eraser, and just, you know, sculpting a flame. That's pretty much it. With a smudge brush, you know, smudge tool, sorry, you can drag and, you know, make the edge of some edge a bit firmer, you know, where the flame sort of concentrates. Right. So that would be one effect, right? Then my first, my second effect would be to do a sort of small glow, like this. You see, just a small glow. And then the third effect would be just a bigger glow, even bigger, like this. Then I'll just play around, you know, like with the intensity, make it not too bright. Something like this. There's even a fourth effect we can create. It's called it's actually called a corona. It means a crown in Latin, and in Spanish as well, and possibly even in Italian. But anyway, it means pretty much what it is. Like, it's a circle. It happens around, you know, when it happens to the sun, when there's like enough humidity in the air to create this effect. It happens to the moon also, and to any really bright light source that's surrounded by humidity, by you know, suspended particles of water in the air. So what's gonna happen is that you're gonna have a circle like this that we're then gonna blur with Gaussian blur. Sorry, you know what? I should make it outside of the edge of the canvas. Okay, right, nice and clear. Fill it in, blur it. Put it back here, right at the center of my light source. Can even make it bigger. The size doesn't matter. It's up to you. That's an aesthetic choice, really. Then create a layer mask, and within the layer mask, just erase pretty much all of it, except really the outer corona, the outer crown. And that's a pretty neat effect, I feel. You can just barely suggest it, you see. That's one of these, like that, along with like lens flare. That's another, you know, overused almost effect. you know, water particles, etc., dust particles. Those are these little effects that in themselves are super easy to do, don't take a lot of time, and they just contribute. It's just a little extra brick, you know, in this whole edifice, this whole impact that you're trying to create, you know. This whole how to say, yeah, I guess illustrative impact that you're trying to build. What else do I have? Okay, so let's imagine that you're satisfied with all, like, this is it, you know, this is your piece pretty much, and now you just want to fine-tune everything. So I would merge all the visible layers using Ctrl-Alt-E. Okay, so here it is. That's like we're arriving towards the end of you know, of the rendering. And then what I would do is use a marker blur again and go all over like the edges of the character, and making sure, you see right here with the smudge tool you can blur things up and just soften the edge of your character, because that's a kind of a, it's kind of an ugly part of digital painting, is that things can be too neat, sorry, and too clearly cut, because we use layers, right? So unless you're really coming from a traditional background and you just paint everything on the background, on the canvas, without using too many layers, then I would recommend, like, unless you do that, I would recommend like this step of just sort of merging, you know, blending, creating a bit of imperfection, you see, messing things up, just to integrate, just to gel a little bit your character to the background, to avoid this neat sort of break, because your character is in movement. So if this is a on the fly sort of snapshot of your character, you know, unless you're using a camera that's super I don't know, that's a very quick shutter. But I mean, you see what I mean? It's a weird technical term. Like, normally you would just see some blur, some motion blur, some imperfection in the edges. So try to break the neatness. It doesn't take a ton of time. It just go around and either paint or smudge, and just get rid of the sharpness around your character. There we go. It's a small, you know, it's a small detail, but it's pretty important. It's something that my art director for Hearthstone actually, you know, insists on really every time. Sometimes I forget to do it, or I don't do it enough, and he reminds me of that. And it's something that old school, you know, like art directors who come from a old school background kind of lament a little bit, you know, is this sort of over the top, like unnatural neatness in digital art. So try to break it off, and yeah, it will be really good. Okay, then there's another pretty interesting effect. It's a blur, like a zoom blur. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to press Ctrl J and duplicate my one canvas, my one layer, right? I'll go to Filter, Blur, Radial Blur. I'll use Zoom and Best for quality. The amount, we leave it to 1 because it's going to be pretty powerful actually. And we're going to sort of follow the overall like perspective, like the vanishing point of our perspective grid. Actually, you know what, let me turn it on. Perspective, okay, here it is. So just, you see this vanishing point on the bottom left corner. So just turn it back off and go back to the filter itself. So blur, radial blur, zoom, quality set to best, of course, and put it pretty much in the corner where it's supposed to be, there. Let's see what it did. Of course, it blurred everything, right? So, but what I wanted it for is to create a sense of motion for the background, because the background is not crazily detailed, right? So it's kind of a double benefit. It blurs things a little bit, but in a way that's convincing, because the camera or ourselves is moving with the character, right? The front character. So by contrast, the character seems immobile to us because we're moving with him, but then the camera is focusing on it. But by contrast, the background, the surrounding environment is kind of zoomed, is blurring away, you know, it's with the movement. So, but of course now everything is blurred, right? At least, you know, including the characters. So what we're gonna do is just create a new layer mask and erase this new layer wherever we don't need it, right? So let's make clear. Let's make sure the face is left clear. In the hand, you can leave a little bit of blur, like in the lamp, for example, if you want to show that the lamp is moving also, like it's swiveling or something. I'll leave a little bit of blur on the hand over there, on the spoon, you know, because those are moving objects. The dagger, I'll make sure there's no blur at all on it, because I want it to be sharp and crisp and easily seen, you know. Same for the buckle, all these details that we were just detailing before. So I'm just erasing the blur there now, like where I don't want it. The rat doesn't need blur either. The tail can use a bit of it. The leg don't need the blur. I'm leaving it here. I mean, this is not a super detailed version, right? It's still the work file for today, so the hair is not super neatly done, but I would leave some blur like on the tip of the hair to show that it's kind of moving, you know. And that's pretty much what we have here. You see, that's the final. The edges of the hair is kind of left blurry, like here. Same for the arm, because I'm trying to picture the arm like moving. But the buckles are still, you see. The dagger is still. The lantern is swiveling a little bit, so it's blurred. This old guy is also blurred. You see what I mean? It's like selective blur. So that's it, really. And now, okay, cherry on the cake. It's just a little side effect that I learned from I think Vojta, and we discussed about it, right, on the Discord server. So it's just another great incentive. You know, if you're not there yet, if you're hesitating joining the Discord server, especially after the live streams are going to be over, you know, like that's a good incentive, because we discussed like these techniques and more, you know, like that, and that stuff. The one I'm going to communicate to you right now, I learned from just hanging out, you know, with Vojta and whoever else was there. I forgot. Sorry for that. Like watching a tutorial from a Riot game artist. I think it's Esben Rasmussen. If I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Basically, it's this. It's a way to create a kind of sharp render at the end, like a sharpening effect. So here's my basic layer. You see it's not super sharp. So I'm gonna duplicate it first using Ctrl J, right? Now I have my duplicated layer. I go to filter, other, oh no, sorry, filter, convert first, convert for smart filters. I'm just going to toggle it. It created a dynamic object out of the layer here. It's this little icon there. It means it's created a dynamic object out of it. Second step, and high pass. And you set it to somewhere, you know, for that dimension, you know, 4000 pixel wide. I take it at 4, you know, easy peasy, you know, 2000 pixel wide. I'd say that at 2, you know, but in this case, I don't know. It's a basic, it's just I don't know, a sort of default measure. So you see it created this weird effect there. So now what you go to is this little icon here, the settings of the layer. That's you click here, double click, overlay. And you see what it created is a sort of a pass of a sharpening pass. And that's really cool. Like, that's the one thing I was wondering, is because I try to use like just sharper brush and just spend an extra 2 hours on it. It never works, you know. And that's it. Like, just it's called a high pass. It's pretty simple, pretty cool, and you have this nice, neat Riot Games sort of, you know, crispness at the end. So that's it. That was my sort of last little tip for tonight. Now I'm gonna move on to the feedback to Fabledbrush. That's the username. So okay, I'll just close this and this as well, and I'll open. Okay, so here's the reference that I think Emily you gave to you know, as to Fabledbrush, right, on the Discord server. It's a really good reference, I feel. So here's the effect I sort of ended up with after playing around, you know, today. Here's your original. Well, actually, here's your original with a green background. But for the sake of actually having a neutral background, you know, not to be too distracted by that green, I turned the background to a medium gray, like 50% gray. So here's your character. Now the first thing we're going to do is create a new layer. Oh no, just duplicate the character, sorry. Now, you know what, actually, let me walk you through the steps as I made them first. So first I just brightened it, brightened. Okay, here it is. Yeah, I just brightened the layer, duplicated it and brightened it a lot. Because this is going to be the base for, you see, all these bleached, very highly brightened patches of light everywhere, right? So first things first, this is not brightened like you would normally brighten, you know, a piece to just make it look like, oh, it's sunlight. It's really bleached. You can see, right? It's bleached and decontrasted a little bit. I'll redo everything, but I'm just sort of walking you through the steps. The second step from that would be to use a layer mask and only paint the light. You see the where I want this bleached layer to show. I don't want it to show everywhere. I just want it to show where a direct light would cast it, you know, using the light direction. This light direction. So basically, you know, light coming from above and slightly behind us, and sort of hitting a little bit from the front. I hope you can visualize that. So yeah, second step would be to do this. Third step would be to create a new layer mask and only paint it in where the, you know, where the foliage would clear up. Then after that, sort of focalize, you know, the effect on well, the focal area, the face kind of thing. Not to make it all over the place. That's a personal choice. I mean, that's what I did, but you can, the mapping can be up to you. Then I would adjust the brightness. See, it's a little too dim, so in this version it's a little brighter. And then I would create a bit of a warmer, you know, effect. A bit of you see, there's a bit of nice warm glow there at the edges of the dappled light there on the reference. And finally, I would where did I do it? Okay, yeah, I would do colder shadows here. That's sorry, I left it on, but here it is. That's the original, and that's just a color balance for cooler shadows. And then I would neutralize the background to make the effect more visible. So that's pretty much it. So I'll just redo these steps just to, you know, walk you through this method. So I duplicated my character layer. Now with image adjustment, brightness, contrast, I'll just really brighten it up a lot and also decontrast it a lot. Then I will make it a little, I feel a little warmer already using color balance over here. You see it's this little icon, this round icon, and going to color balance. I'll group my color balance onto my brighten layer, and I'll just make it slightly warmer. So I'll push the reds and the yellows somewhat, you know, that's all. You know, just to mimic basically this very warm, very bleached light from the reference. I'll merge it down. And now I will create a layer mask. I will empty it with a control backspace. You see, I just emptied the layer mask, so now it doesn't show. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint it only where, you know, how to say, I'm gonna paint it where the light would hit the character, like a light coming from above in this case. Of course, you know, if you have a different idea, you know, set the light from a different direction. But I'm thinking, you know, just a front, like a noon light almost, you know, very, very bright. So basically, using a round soft brush, I'm trying to hit mostly the planes that face up, right? Front and up on the character. So the orbits of the eyes are not hit so much, the underside of the eyelid not so much. This cheek would be hit more, the eyelid not so much. The forehead is hit like this. It looks a little weird at first, you know, especially because the colors are not exactly set up quite right, you know, at this point for this lighting, but we'll adjust that later. Right now I'm just sort of focusing on creating a consistent top-down lighting. That's over the whole character. And of course casting a few shadows, you know, from locks of hair under the nose, you see. Under the mouth, like under the neck, like this. I'm checking the chat, like if anybody has further questions, let me know. You know, on the top of the shoulder pad as well, like mostly on the top, right? Then not so much on the side that faces up, that faces us, sorry, that faces forward. This sort of tab here wouldn't receive too much. Then the sleeve. I'll take my time on this one. First of all, because it's the last episode in a while, and also because I really want to like show you, not just describe, you know, quickly, but actually like walk you through it, right? So I'm just going to take a while and really cast that light from the really from up to down, trying to gauge exactly where it falls. So on the top of this sort of breast, this leather corset, right? Then the bottom recedes into the shadow. You know, how strong the shadow is up to you. You know, how big you want the breast to seem, of course. But we have a nice how to say, indication. It's just slightly curved like this, so I'm not gonna overdo it. Let's work on the hair somewhat. And you see I'm painting all that within the layer mask. If I fill it full, like you see, this is what original layer is like. And now I'm just painting the top down light as it would fall on a character. It would fall on the locks. I'm going to create like some direct light on the locks. And then in between you see like I would imagine light would bounce within the hair and sort of brighten up the hair inside like this. Some on the braid over here. So you see it's methodical, it takes a while, but it's gonna be like it's gonna pay off at the end. Because dappled lighting, you know, you cannot just improvise it. It's really it's pretty hard. It's like it's an advanced technique really. It's one of the most difficult like illustration techniques to really pull off. So what matters at this point is really to be consistent in terms of light intensity. According to the plane, you know, the angle of the planes, of the face. Create nice, like beautiful, consistent cast shadows. This is where having a neat sketch like yours is really good. It makes this feedback a real breeze, you know. You just have to follow like all the forms that you've already indicated. Let's cast some light onto the arm. I'm stroking out already. It's been 2 hours. And again, like at this point, it's okay if like some colors are a little weird, a little bleached. You know, it's really not. It's not the point of this pass here. Like this step right here is just to make sure we set up the light exactly where it needs to be. The light and the shadows, of course. Following the folds in the clothing. Let's go down and continue. I'll select the area of the belt. It's going to be easier and faster. Nice little cast shadow under the buckle. Then invert the selection and paint outside. Creating some cast shadows, erasing cast shadows here and there. I'm sure you see the point by now. we're almost there. It's a lengthy, methodical sort of approach, but I promise it's gonna pay off. Some light is striking the, and you must have had like either great reference or, well, I guess which would be more flattering. Like you're good at anatomy. I don't know which one. Probably both, right? But yeah, it's really neat. It's really easy to follow. Okay, some more here. All right. Some light would fall on the shoulders. Yeah, I think we're almost there. You do see the point though, right? Yeah, I need to put some more light here. Okay, let's call it done. I'll remove this. Okay, so now we pretty much have this weird like bleached, over the top, like everywhere light. But it's consistently mapped out to follow the direction of a top-down lighting scheme, right? So I'll just apply the layer mask. I feel like I should brighten it some more. Yeah, that would be better, because it's really bleached on the picture. Okay, now I'll create a new layer mask, and now I'm gonna select a soft brush and a soft eraser and remove the transfer. You see? So now it's really like it's kind of sharp in a way. And that will help us create this mottled, dappled sort of a pattern here. And that's an interesting, there's an interesting logic to it. Wherever you see, okay, for example, on the cheek here, or on the chest, on the neck, shadows are kind of long, because it's basically, you see, it's dropping from a surface that's vertical. You see what I mean? Like shadows that hit vertical surfaces or near vertical surfaces cannot drop, in an exaggerated straight fashion like this. And wherever like a surface is more faces up, more horizontal, then you'll have shadows sort of collecting and being much more, precise and small and blotchy, like you can see on the top of her cheekbone. You see, if you compare, it's pretty much the same sort of effect, the same sort of object, casting shadows like leaves, branches, whatever. But on the reference, on her cheekbone, this is a much more concentrated detail. Whereas on her chest, it's like a long, stretched out detail, because the chest is vertical and it's stretching the shadow. So this is what we're going to do here. I'm going to create like sort of long shadows wherever things disappear into the vertical, like on the chest, for example. You can like imagine just an egg running, like if you put like a runny egg on the shoulder pad, it would rest mostly, like part of it would rest just untouched, unmoving so much, on the top of the shoulder pad. And then the side that's like the part that's like close to the edge would just sort of drop like this, right? And leak down like this. So this is what we're going to create. So vertical surfaces will have like this sort of more vertical pattern of details. And surfaces that face up will have more, blotchy, concentrated, rounded details. Now, okay, logic alone is not going to make it look good, right? You need to actually spend some time and devise a pattern that works great. Okay, another way we can do it, I'm just going to duplicate it, is by emptying the layer first and then painting in where we want it. That might be better, that might be easier. This way you start from, you see it's the opposite. Instead of erasing, instead of adding shadows, you add light. And so you can concentrate on maybe the focal area where you want it to be. And this way, and you see I can keep going, but you see I won't, the great part is that I will be stopped wherever there's a cast shadow, like a natural cast shadow. That's why I spend the time doing the cast shadows before. It's because I don't have to think about them now, you know, those are done. So now I can just focus on the patterning, like you know, you see what I mean, like this sort of patterning here. And the intensity of the light itself is kind of already set. You see, I cannot go beyond, I cannot go within the shadow, the cast shadow of the shoulder pad. So that's really cool. That's a detail that's like automatically generated now. I'll make that detail kind of run down. And remember that you're painting foliage, right? So you can add like loose suggestion of a leaf. And slowly but surely it's going to take shape. Especially when now that I'm thinking I'm painting leaves, you see my shadows start to have a shape that's more natural looking. Now where these leaves are cast, these leaf shadows are cast onto a vertical area, it's a bit more vertical, like it runs down, you know, like this idea of a runny egg, you know, like we said before. And here on top of the cheekbone it would collect into a rounder, sort of neater shape, which is also a good way to create a, you know, a focal detail, like a focalizing detail, a detail that helps the viewer, that, you know, creates a nice I don't know, sharp contrast of details around the eye, and it's going to make the viewer sort of spend more time in that area. Whereas the long vertical details of the chest, for example, will make the viewer, like the eye, sort of go down, you know, more in a more straight manner. It might not be super easy at first, you know, it might be, it might take you a while. It did take me a while to sort of figure this method out, because I didn't really have a method for it before. It's kind of improvised. But I feel with a bit of practice, this is the most, you know, by the book, painting by the numbers, fail safe, you know, foolproof sort of method I can find. Again, details that collect on the surface that faces up. And then you see like this sort of run down the arm. And slowly but surely we'll just deal with the whole piece like that. Again, you see a vertical shape right there on the bow, so just a vertical shadow, a long vertical shadow, same for the arm. I'm constantly confusing the eraser with the brush. So I have to redo it sometimes. It's a bit... that's what I was saying, like it just takes a while to just get used to that. And we're getting there. That's just an aesthetic choice, you see, like however you frame the face. It's kind of up to... It's more of a graphic sort of a design kind of choice. It's kind of a hard technique because you need to think, okay, is this a vertical plane? Is the shadow going to be long? Is the shadow at the right, you know, an interesting area to begin with? So there's a lot of like painting and erasing. But I like the fact that the method is really consistent. Maybe I should clear a bit more her face. It's not so pretty otherwise. Especially the jawline. It's such an important feature, you know. On a model reference, you know, it's so realistic that you can guess how pretty somebody is already, you know. But on a painting, you know, the face is so tricky to begin with that if you can leave some edges alone, you know, it will make your character all the more attractive. You see, if I sort of break it up with some shadows, it could be harder to see. It depends. It's up to you, but I just wanted to stress the point that yeah, the edges of a face are you know, like the key place where you can gauge if somebody's like, I don't know, I guess classically attractive or not. Few long shadows. Maybe this part can be, I don't know, more in the light, you know, as if like there was a tree kind of across. Again, it's kind of a vertical sort of shape, so the shadows should be more stretched. And now let's see. I really want to nail those on the face. We're coming to an end, but I'm just taking a bit more time to really refine that the shadows on the face. Because on the arms, etc., it doesn't really matter. I mean, you know, it's not super important as long as it's consistent with you see the logic, the stretched according to vertical. The placement itself of the shadow is not so important, but on the face, it's super vital. Like it's really, it can make or break the appeal of the artwork. Okay, I'll call it done for now, just because I want to show you the next steps. So I'll now apply the layer mask. Okay, again, create a new layer mask. This time turn on the transfer of my brushes. And making sure I'm painting on the layer mask, I'll erase like I'll just sort of focus my lighting on where I really want it. I'll apply that layer mask again. Okay, so now this is our layer. Okay, I'm gonna create a new layer. I'll see if it works, and I'll set it to hard light. I'll fill it in whatever this, so this sort of orangish color, because what I want to do is like kind of you see, remove these kind of shadows that don't really work this like orangish sort of shadow. I want to like bleach them out, sort of. At least on the face. Yeah, that would work somewhat. And now I'm just going to reuse that color only to mask these shadows that don't work so well. At this point, I feel it's okay to make this thing here. So it's a layer that's set in linear dodge that we're gonna set like fill in black. Now we're gonna create a new layer that we clip on top of that, right? And we're gonna select a reddish color, something like this. Yes, that's gonna help us create this sort of warm glow on the skin. That's a really neat effect. You see, it's already sort of getting a almost final touch to it, right? And you add warmth wherever you feel it needs it. There's going to be a bit of, overpainting to do, like, on the lips. This is kind of a basic pass, right? All of that. It still needs to, at the end, be merged and then kind of overpainted and carefully rendered over. Or what you can do also is like fix in advance the coloring and then do all that stuff. It'll be easier, but it's okay to do it after, is what I'm saying. And finally, let's go to our basic layer, this one here. Go to this icon right there, this little round icon, and go to color balance. Make sure you clip that color balance layer to only the character. And let's push up the blues somewhat. You see, so by we're making the base a little colder to accentuate the warmth even more. And that's pretty much it. That's the essence of that series of effect, that procedure, right? So I mean, the way I did it, it's a bit rough right now. I think it looked a little better here. I don't know, you see, like, several solutions can work, but same method essentially. Where's my effect? Where did I? Okay, here it is. Sorry for that. You can always, like, tone down the brightness if it was too much. Play with the saturation. You see what I mean? There's more, you can take it further, of course, but that's pretty much the basic. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining for this, kind of last live stream for a while. I'll take a quick break, but I'll be in the Discord server after that for for a few minutes if anybody has any question, and if that's it, well, thank you very much for joining, and yeah, I guess I'll talk to you soon on the Discord server. All right, thank you very much. Bye bye.